Along with the Blacula films, Love at First Bite is what taught me everything about vampires as a kid, for better or worse. Everything would change when I saw The Lost Boys, but that's a story for another day. As a kid in the early 80s, I didn't know what to expect when I first saw this film. I thought it would be a horror film when I initially saw it. If I saw the film for the first time now, I know that any film with George Hamilton in it can't be a horror film. Except maybe for Godfather Part 3, for reasons. Anyway, the film is about Dracula finding his long-lost reincarnated love who's a model in this life. Things kick into high gear once the Romanian government evict him out of his castle so they can change it into a athlete training camp. I didn't know Romania had eminent domain. Dracula and Renfield, his servant, track the model Cindy to New York, but get separated and some wacky shenanigans ensue. Wait a minute, that doesn't look like a casket, that looks like a comic book long box. Also, was that a John Lennon cameo? After some wacky antics at a local church that's being sermoned by George Jefferson, Dracula has an underwhelming altercation with the welcoming community. After some investigation by Renfield, who stalked an obviously chilly young lady, they finally find Cindy. Dracula is thwarted in his initial attempt to meet up with her and is thrown into the dog pound. After that, he decides to let off some steam by turning to a puppet bat and fly around town. During that, he gets mistaken for someone's ex-wife, a black chicken by this film's Mexican stereotype. He returns home back to his apartment after sucking blood from a wino, making him drunk. Vampire lesson number 1. Vampires can change into things like dogs, mist, or a rejected Muppet. Vampire lesson number 2. What you eat or drink beforehand affects the vampire when they drink your blood. In that case, Count Dracula being a vegan vampire makes perfect sense now. After tracking down Cindy to, I assume, Studio 54, he seduces her with a dance to disco music that would have been dated by the time this film was released. Well, he winds up being so successful that she takes him back to her place. Now, before he gets down to business with her, he does his best Alfred Hitchcock impersonation for some reason. Most people will question why she has her cat in the refrigerator. My question is, why was it there for 2 days?
Oh, so that's where you've been for the last 2 days, and I thought you were lost, you little devil. There you go.
Well, apparently the sex was so amazing that Cindy must tell her psychiatrist about it the very next day. During her appointment, we learn that they have an interesting relationship. Her doctor, a Mr. Dr. Jeffrey Rosenberg, has a secret though. He's the grandson of vampire hunter Fritz Van Helsing. It's here as a kid where I learned my very next vampire lesson. Vampire lesson number 3. A vampire needs to bite you on the neck 3 times in order to turn you into a vampire. Dr. Jeff tries to warn Cindy off of Dracula, but she doesn't believe him, not even after he delivers his best line in the entire film.
Sweetheart, darling, trust me. Your life is in danger. I almost love you.
Well, in the end, he does convince her to take him on a date with her with Dracula. When they meet, at first there's some passive-aggressive threatening, but Cindy leaves, then Dracula and Dr. Jeff try to out-hypnotize each other. Vampire lesson number 4. The only religious symbol that works on vampires are the Catholic and Christian crosses. I wonder why Kitty Pryde's Star of David worked on him in the comics. I guess Dr. Jeff just didn't believe hard enough. After that confrontation, of which we don't see the resolution of, Dracula makes his way back to Cindy's apartment and uses his odd charisma and powers to try to get with her again. Okay, just how stupid is Cindy supposed to be? I understand that this film exists in a gag world and she's supposed to be a flake, but come on. She doesn't immediately find it odd that a guy just appears on her balcony and her apartment is at least several stories in the air, uses telekinesis to undo her bedding and toss her phone across the room. Daylight is coming, so Renfield crows like a rooster, and Dracula books it to his casket. Did Dracula really just break the fourth wall by giving the audience the middle finger before closing the casket? Well, sometime later, Dr. Jeff goes to the police station, and it's here where we meet one of the thugs that Dracula beat up earlier. The cops try to pry information out of the kid, and he delivers one of the best lines in the film.
I don't know their names. I just met them walking down the street. And you know we all look alike.
Did he just racially profile himself? Okay, from this point on, Dr. Jeff is pretty much the main character. He tries to get the police to help him to get rid of Dracula. Then he tracks Dracula to his and Renfield's apartment and tried to burn him undead. Question, how did he find out where they lived? Also, couldn't he have just opened up the casket and just let the sunlight kill Dracula? I guess it wouldn't be as theatric. Finally, why was he dressed up like Mr. Bean meets the Little Rascals? Well, he doesn't succeed and he's put in the paddy wagon and sent to a mental institution. A psychiatrist is now a patient in the crazy house? How ironic. Didn't something like this happen to Dr. Hugo Strange and Amadeus Arkham in the Batman comics and video games? Well, anyway, Cindy visits Dr. Jeff at the funny farm and he decides to use this time to propose to her. Meanwhile, Dracula and Renfield go to the blood bank to make a withdrawal. Vampire lesson number 5. The entire vampire problem can be solved just with a trip to the local Red Cross, apparently. Later on, Dracula takes Cindy out to dinner and gives her a pendant from his hometown, I guess. Dr. Jeff tracks them down again and tries to stake Dracula rare. After that scene, Cindy and Dracula hook up again and he gives a line that was only good because he displayed an O-face.
Finally, after 712 years, to have someone bite me again.
At some point, the cop from earlier visits Dr. Jeff in a padded cell and decides to team up with him to stop Dracula. The film climaxes with Cindy going with Dracula, but not before leaving something for Dr. Jeff, his payment for a year's work. The lovebirds flap over the ocean into the night. Wait, how are they gonna get to Romania before daybreak? Oh well. Yeah, this movie is silly and not scary in the least, but it is funny and has a very good soundtrack. While it didn't have a ton of memorable lines, it did have a good deal of zingers. The acting was on point, and the only issue I have is with one of the characters and not with the actor themselves. Susan St. James Cindy just was so off the wall and didn't use logic anytime during the film. I assume the reason the filmmakers added her visit to the shrink was to show that she isn't quite right. Plus, she fell in love with Dracula in seemingly the same time Disney heroines do, 3 days, or at least it felt that way. George Hamilton was good giving his best Boris Karloff, I think, impersonation. I'm also impressed he was able to pull off the whole resting bitch face for 90% of the flick. He was even nominated for Best Actor for the Golden Globes and winning a Saturn Award. The supporting cast was also really good as well. Stan Dragai, the director of films like Mr. Mom, The Man with One Red Shoe, and Necessary Roughness, directed the film, and with maybe just one editorial hiccup, the film was shot very well. It's been years since I've seen this film, so I wondered how it would hold up. It did. Very well, actually. The film itself did well at the box office as well. On a budget of $3 million, it made $43.9 million. Even though it was successful, there never was a sequel, and there probably never will be. But in 2009, George Hamilton did express interest in making one, 30 years after the film came out. I think the time has passed for a sequel, and as far as making a remake of it, nah, it came out at the exact right time. Spoof movies were starting to be a thing then, like Kentucky Fried Movie, Airplane, and so on. As of right now, spoof movies are dead. Even though I enjoyed the film and recommend it, I did have some thoughts while watching it. If Dracula was evicted from his castle, then how come he has enough money to pay for things like an apartment, the unmanned horse carriage, and so on? How is it possible that Cindy can get away with not paying her psychiatrist for a year, and how come the medical bar hasn't taken away Dr. Jeff's license away from him for his on-again, off-again relationship with Cindy while doctoring her, as well as him being sent to a mental institution? The newspapers say that over 40 people have been bitten so far, but the only ones we see on screen is Cindy and Dracula himself. Was this production so cheap that it couldn't even show Dracula biting extras? And finally, is Bellhop Billy a creeper? Ah well, some questions weren't meant to be answered, I suppose. If you like this video, then please subscribe. I'm trying to get at least 1,000 new subscribers by the beginning of next year. And until next time, have a good day.
Anna, come on. Go to bed. Maybe get in a little quickie.
No. With you, never a quickie. Always a longie.
What is that? Oh, my